How to love the villain in your story. Hi, I'm Anne-Margaret with this week's Sacred Sunday message to raise the vibration of your body, mind, and spirit. We all have villains, and we are, many times when we're speaking our truth and being our authentic self, we can be the villain in other people's story. But how do we not get in the trap of pointing the finger so that we're forfeiting our power, we're living in misery, we're struggling against what this person is saying or doing or how they're behaving? And it's really challenging when somebody is intentionally trying to attack you. But if we know a strategy, if we can understand that our knee-jerk reaction to try and defend ourselves comes from within us, then we can regain or reclaim our power and not forfeit it in the face of somebody else's unconscious behavior or somebody else's disagreement with the way that we have chosen to live our lives, because that can also be a villain for us. That might not be somebody intentionally trying to hurt us. It just might be somebody who is confronting us in some way without even meaning to. So thanks for joining me today. This is a very valuable talk because when we point the finger, we keep ourselves in prison. So it's good to also, recognize where we can grow and how we can be more conscious in the way that we treat others, of course. But how do we also manage those who are intentionally trying to hurt us? So thanks for joining me. Let's dive right in. So the role of the villain. You've heard me talk about archetypes before quite a bit, and it all is a context for how we see things that influences our reality and our experience of reality. So if we are seeing people in our lives who are challenging us, who are pain points for us in some way, if we're simply experiencing the pain and we're simply experiencing the trigger really that is being set off, then we miss the higher seeing place. We just keep ourselves trapped in that animalistic knee-jerk reaction, and we can never liberate ourselves or heal what needs to be healed, typically old traumas that are being stirred up, in order to be the kind of person that we want to be with anybody who shows up in our lives, however they're showing up. I still do this from time to time when I felt confronted or I felt like I was getting off a vibration or kicked out of balance. I would think of somebody like the Dalai Lama. Like the Dalai Lama, for me, I had a chance to meet him in New York. And just the radiance of peace that he exudes is it's just breathtaking. And so I would always think about him whenever I was feeling something and be like, well, how would the Dalai Lama act this way? Or those old bracelets from like the 90s, what would Jesus do? The WWJD. It's like listening to an aspect of ourselves or calling on an aspect of ourselves that can be more at peace. But we can't be at peace unless we've done the work, unless we've healed, unless we've brought that peace within ourselves so that we're not so easily triggered by others. Okay, so the role of the villain. There is a theory that I base a lot of things on in my life and a lot of my teaching through my coaching and with couples coaching and all of that, called the theory of a soul agreement. Now, this is not something I can prove. This is something like any esoteric principle that I've only come to adopt as a theory because it really works for me. So it's not a hypothesis anymore in my life. It really has been proven to be effective. Can I prove it to you through the five senses? No. But I also can offer it as something that could be a tried or attempted hypothesis in your life to try out and see if it can become a theory in your life that could work for you. So the soul agreement theory is that everyone in our lives, even the perpetrators of the most heinous crimes against us, the deepest traumas, on a soul level before we got here, that we could have, right? I don't know. We could have made an agreement to come into this life, like playing out a movie or a play where everybody has to play their role. And in order for any story to be interesting at all or to help us grow, there needs to be a villain. If you think about it, any show you've ever watched, anything that is about a hero emerging or stepping into his or her power, it is always prompted by a villainous person or action that they need to overcome or step more into their fullness. So the role of the villain is crucial in our lives if we are truly here to expand. If we're trying to avoid the villain and just keep everybody around us who thinks like us and will bow to us or walk on eggshells around us, we're never going to expand. So if every story has a villain, and you, like I said, might be someone else's villain without even trying, just because of who you are. And this common denominator amongst all of us, and it's why we have this knee-jerk reaction to things that are unpleasant in our lives or people that we consider villains. We all have a common denominator, an archetype called the child, right? The inner child or the wounded child. And the shadow aspect of the wounded child, this is just something like we all go through traumas growing up. We all go through traumas in our childhood. No matter how well-intentioned our parents are, how great a job they do, we all go through traumas. Even just being born is the greatest trauma of all, going from oneness to separateness. So that child, that inner child, wounded child, common denominator, the shadow aspect of that particular archetype within us is just blaming all the dysfunctional relationships that we have as adults on childhood wounds. And it's like resisting moving through the forgiveness process or the alchemizing process of healing our own traumas. What do we want to do? We just want somebody else to solve them for us, right? We want them to apologize finally and admit what a horrible mother they were, or how our perpetrator in our teens just completely, eradicated our innocence. Whatever it is, if we are waiting for somebody else to do that work, we will probably be waiting for a long time and we'll keep ourselves in prison. So what's really the goal when we're facing something that is triggering something within us? It's either one of two things. We're either ego-driven, and the goal is ego-driven. So when we're facing that villain, we're ego-driven, meaning we're stuck in a low vibration. We are seeking to dominate them, to win, to defend ourselves, or to throw the attack right back in their face. And what we're doing is we're matching their archetype. We're matching that lower frequency that we're experiencing from them when they're on the attack themselves. Or, so we either have a ego agenda or ego-driven, or we're soul-driven. And if we're soul-driven, this means that we are committed to our heart, to love, the highest frequency. We're committed to expansion, growth, understanding, experiencing new, higher levels of consciousness and moving through the world. Like I think of the Dalai Lama again, right? Having a sense of inner peace in our being, no matter what we experience. So coming from that more high vibrational place, we are committed to love, we're committed to compassion for others, we're committed to our own freedom. And that is huge. It's stepping into being the hero or the heroine in our story. So what's the goal? We have to look at how we're moving through. And the hero or the heroine, I keep dropping that archetype. There is a passion for personal development. There's a real commitment for that expansion. So let's go into the strategy. So we're under attack. What has us react in that moment? We are frustrated with ourselves for getting caught up with this. Like maybe it's the same person or the same thing that happens to us over and over and over again. And we get so annoyed. We're like, why do I keep getting upset about this? Why can't I get over this? The villain may be acting from that lower vibrational choice, or they are just triggering you because of who they are and you don't like who they are. Maybe they live differently than you, okay, or make different choices or believe something differently than you do. So our frustration can really get to us, and then we're lacking compassion with how we're moving through the attack. Let's take a look at 3 different types of villains, and there are a lot of different, but we'll look at this. So one is trying to destroy, and they have like a very intoxicating addiction to destructive power. So maybe they're coming from that place and they want to destroy you or destroy your dreams or what you've built, okay? There's a bully. We all met bullies too, right? This really conceals deep verbal abuse that they've received, or physical abuse, and the fears that they have around that. So they project it onto you, all right? That's a very common villain for us. Also, I talk a lot about also the vampires, the energetic vampires. They deplete you. It's like they leech onto you and or your light, and they don't do the work themselves because they're caught in that victim mentality, right? So they're leeching onto you and depleting you. They're constantly complaining. It's a very codependent relationship. So what's our strategy here? Because we can go into all kinds of other villains, the thief, right? A lot of different other ones exist, but those top three ones, the destroyer, the bully, and the vampire, I feel like are really, really common. So what's a poor strategy? Let's look at poor strategies first. So a poor strategy we have in this, and it's what we fall victim to a lot, is fight or flight. We immediately go to our root chakra reaction, our very animalistic physical survival reaction of fight or flight. And this looks like reacting, right? So we're fighting, we're reacting, we have that knee-jerk reaction, or we're suppressing and we run and we just kind of push everything down in our bodies to keep the peace. But we're keeping the peace superficially. It's not authentic, and it's certainly not peace within ourselves. Okay, this fight or flight is ideal for physical, but it's not great for emotional, mental, and spiritual health. Okay, that's very important. We are more than just being animals, right? So instead, sometimes we'll just cut somebody out of our lives because we don't want to deal with it anymore. We'll disengage. But what happens is we're missing out on an opportunity for growth, for healing, for expansion within ourselves. Because these villains in our life, when they are reflecting back something and we react, this is an unhealed, unresolved, raw trauma that is still within us. And trauma might be too strong of a word for you to kind of grasp at this moment or even just entertain because you're like, nah, it feels a little bit too heavy. It might just be some trap or something that it's like your funny bone and you hit it. It goes off and in a way that is so supersedes what the circumstances are you're currently navigating. It throws up a lot of old emotion that hasn't been dealt with. So let's look at effective strategies now for your physical, mental, emotional, and your spiritual health. So I have a few steps here. I have 4 different steps. The first thing is when you get the attack, or maybe you get a trigger, or maybe it doesn't even look like an attack, but you're just like annoyed by something you see on social media. Somebody else believes something differently than you do. Oh, God forbid, right? First thing is breathe and notice. Take a breath. Notice, wow, I have a very animalistic knee-jerk response. I want to attack that person. My physical body is feeling heat, rage. I want to attack. I feel sad. Breathe and notice and say, isn't that interesting? What you're doing in that moment is you're separating your knee-jerk response, you're interrupting it, and you're going into the observer, that higher conscious place where you are observing yourself. That's what it's doing. It's interrupting, perpetuating the conflict. Don't you want to do that? If you're in a soul place, you want to. If you're in ego place, you want to perpetuate it and dominate and win, right? So we have to take a look. What's our commitment? What are we up to? What's the goal? Number 2, the second step is own it. Own it. This is not about them. This is about me. This is not about them. This is about me. This is about my growth. This is about my expansion. And dare I say, could you be even grateful or experience gratitude towards that person who is triggering you in some way? Wow, they just showed me somewhere I still have to work, somewhere I still want to grow, and you can take space. Like, you can interrupt. Isn't that interesting? If they want to engage with you, you can say, you know what? I think I better take a moment. Let me give you a call back, or turn off your social media. Give yourself some space so that you have a moment for yourself to go through these next 2 steps. All right. So number 1, right? Remember, breathe, notice. Isn't this interesting? Interrupt the response so you don't fire back. Number 2, own it. This is not about them. This is about me. Because who cares? They're going to act however they're going to act, and you can only control how you're going to react. If you're focusing on them, you're going to try and micromanage them and completely miss your opportunity for expansion. So number 3, experience it. So now you notice, okay, you're in a powerful place to go, okay, this is about me. I recognize there's some work to do. What do? I need to experience it. I need to feel it. And this doesn't mean go back to the trauma and relive it. I'm not talking about that. Just experiencing in your body the emotions. What what trauma is being activated? Maybe if you somebody who criticizes you of something, you feel those moments, those past moments where you were really getting annihilated for being you're really getting annihilated and being criticized, and that was very painful, and you didn't experience it in the moment. You just kind of pushed it down, or maybe you lashed out at that person when you were a kid or a teenager, or maybe last week, right? These traumas can happen yesterday or even today. So experience it, explore it. What trauma is being activated? What this is doing is bringing awareness of what's still raw within you that people connect with, and you immediately go into your animal defense, your egoic defense, all right? What needs love and healing? And the last thing is giving your space, giving yourself space, loving yourself. You are not perfect. You're a human being. This is what human beings go through when they are committed to expanding on a soul level and not just trying to dominate others from the ego or try and get everybody around them who agrees with them. That's prison. That's imprisoning yourself. That's making sure that nobody goes into your fortress who you can't get along with. What a boring life, right? You want freedom. So when you're feeling it, this fourth step is love yourself with compassion, recognizing that the work you're doing is incredibly courageous. It's healing the trauma, the sores within you that somebody touches and you immediately go into that animalistic response. So all of this takes time. All of this takes practice. These 4 steps: breathe and notice, to interrupt. Own it. This is not about them. This is about me. Explore it. Feel it. Experience. What is this about? Where is this initial trauma? Be curious. Give some space. You don't want to do this in front of people and engage in an argument, okay? And then the 4th thing is just be loving and compassionate toward yourself. Be kind, okay? And acknowledge your courage. So with this mastery, it doesn't come unless we practice it. Like any physical mastery of being, like going and being an Olympic athlete, you need to practice, or an expert musician, you need to practice the physical coordination and the mental coordination. So the mental, energetic, and spiritual muscles are the same as your physical ones. They're the same as your physical ones. So what you think over and over again, watch that. That creates your reality. Your emotional reaction, if you can't interrupt and go through these 4 steps, you're going to perpetuate that being on the hook of anybody who can trigger you, rather than just healing the triggers, healing the traumas, right? And then remember that you're doing this great work of what I call the 3rd nature, or the chosen nature, the consciously chosen nature. So we have our natural way of coming into this world as kids. We're free, we're self-expressed, we're loving, we're easily forgiving, and then we get domesticated by our experience unconsciously. We get domesticated into beliefs and systems and structures and identities that help us make sense of the world, but we're in a reactive place. This 3rd chosen consciousness, right, or nature, is consciously created. This is the best, wisest investment of time and energy, because you are creating the world like your home. You know, you're setting up your home and making sure it's a place that you really want to inhabit. You're setting up your home through this conscious creation of this 3rd nature. You're consciously creating your beliefs. You're consciously healing the triggers, the emotional triggers within you, so that you can be your own little Dalai Lama. You can be your own little Jesus inside and feel like you do not get triggered by other people. You can breathe and be of support and service on their path. So there's no suppression. There's no reaction. There's no pretense of a smile covering up all of the crap underneath everything. We want complete freedom and flow of love through us, so that we can truly be our authentic self. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you got something out of this and use that strategy. Remember, what's the goal? Are you coming from ego, or are you coming from a soul purpose? Okay. And I put some essential oils that help align you, like an oil that helps you to face your own shadow or face those traumas. That's really important. And then also an oil that helps you feel protected, so you can do that really courageous work. So check those out this afternoon, just in a little bit. I'm doing a group channeling session. So go to our website, raisethevibration.com. It's only a $10 or $20 donation today if you want to join us for that. And my ladies, I've got Galentine's Day for the Women's Circle next Sunday on the 14th of February. Thanks so much for joining me. And until next time, Keep raising your vibration, everybody. All right. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.